Life's a journey. Even if you disagree with each other's viewpoints, there's nothing stopping us from being respectful and harmonious. We work in a justice system. We don't live in a fairness system. The outcomes and the results that come from vulnerability, it produces a better result.
Mm.
So if we come back to our mutual values, that's the gold. We've been doing law for a long time, but this is law differently. There can be misunderstandings, and people are not perceiving their own role in things. Our value set, as long as it's aligned with our work, I think it gives us this huge propulsion.
Hello and welcome to the Success Differently podcast. My name is Michelle Sorgaroli and I'm your host today, and we're being joined by Richard Johnson. Richard is co-founder and partner of Ascent Employment Law. He loves people, and I can attest to that, and he believes that neither people nor workplaces are cookie cutters, so your legal solutions shouldn't be either. Richard is passionate about ensuring that he handles even the most complex and emotion-filled matters with practicality, fairness, and respect. Now, interestingly enough, I find this curious. I'm going to ask you about this. Richard's education actually started with a Bachelor of Science in the year 2000, which then led to a Bachelor's in Psychology with honors, I might add, and finally culminated in a Bachelor of Laws, and he started his legal career in 2006. Richard is also a father, a husband to two beautiful boys, a joke teller, a traveler, a dog lover, and an advocate for the truth. So it is a privilege to welcome you here, Richard. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. What a kind introduction. Yes, it's an absolute privilege.
It's exciting. Yeah. All righty. So let's just go right back to science.
Life's a journey.
Yes, exactly. So you started off with a Bachelor of Science. I'd love to hear a little bit about what led you to pursuing a degree in science first, and maybe we'll start there, and then I'd love to hear a little bit after that, what happened to change it or
Well,
shift
and
you.
I love this. And I didn't get, I don't know your questions, and so I'm casting my mind back, and I'm loving that I'm thinking through this as we go. Life's a journey.
Yeah.
Life was a journey then. Life is still a journey now.
Mm.
And I was a young young guy growing up in Kitchener, Ontario, and would be the first university educated person in my family. And I was thinking about what I wanted to do, and I loved science.
Mm.
And the University of Guelph had this great science arts program for your first year of undergrad called academia. And I went into that, and then I started studying microbiology and virology and loved it, and I was passionate about it. And then the realization struck. You don't get to talk and have a back and forth conversation with viruses and bugs in a lab. And I don't know why it didn't strike me, but I found that
Oh,
there's something lacking in a laboratory existence for me. And that's what caused me then to go and do a psych degree at Waterloo and kind of foster the passion for humankind and whatever we can get up to.
really curious. So why psychology? What was the driver there?
Human behavior. I've always, ever since I was a little kid, I've always found body language and human interaction fascinating. And so I knew that it was okay to get more education, and that was something that, certainly my mother
Mm.
encouraged. And so went and did a degree in psychology at the University of Waterloo, and have not regretted that time for a second.
Hmm.
And then went into law. It was a
Awesome.
natural progression at that point. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to come back to that, but I want to stick with psych for a minute. You said since you were a little kid, you've been interested in human behavior and human dynamics and interactions. What do you think might have fostered that or fueled that interest?
Candidly, I think there can be all sorts of reasons why people end up in the spots that they're in. For me, I candidly think it was my family dynamic. I think it was growing up in a household where there was a lot of unspoken tensions and
Mm.
dynamics and things going on, and very different people. I have a sibling. My brother's 5 years older than me, and believe it or not, life wasn't always in complete harmony between my brother and I. And we didn't live in a family where we talked about a lot of stuff openly
Mm,
and
mhm,
honestly and unpack
mm,
things. And I think it was that gave me this drive to understand, like, okay, so I don't understand it. I want to understand it. Let's read
mhm,
books. Let's
mm.
watch shows and unpack it all.
Isn't that curious, eh, where it shows up advocacy for the truth? your love of people, and at the same time, here we pop right back into today around workplace issues and employment law. Isn't that curious how very often employment's, yeah, I'm
I
definitely
know.
noticing that.
Yeah.
So, in your family dynamic, as you were growing up and learning, what sort of lessons or insights might you have drawn for that from that time that have perhaps served you in your career?
The big one that comes to mind right now, off the top of my head, is we live and work in a time when there's a really large prevalence of bullying and harassment. We work in the gray, as I'll say. So
Mm,
in my practice, both for employers and employees, I'm finding that there are a lot of dynamics and rifts and tension points in the workplace. And it
mm,
could be caused by something completely unrelated to the workplace, like political tensions across the world.
mhm,
People may be people of faith or have a certain background where their home nation is war torn or there's something happening. That stuff gets imported into the workplace because people carry it.
mhm,
And so it's those issues that play out that require unpacking and discussion and dialogue and respect. And I think because I'm not a psychologist, I have an undergrad, I'm not a psychologist, but I think having grown up in a place where that was staunched down and we didn't really unpack things, I now appreciate that that's a tool that can be used in the workplace. And so a lot of my work revolves around those kinds of issues.
Thank you. That's brilliant. So I just want to ask you, when you speak about unpacking, it's a word you've used a few times now. What does that mean for you?
So people will come into their work, and a very typical experience is that I'm called in not necessarily at the front end of an issue. As a lawyer, you're called in when things require an hourly rate
Mm,
or have gotten so bad that you got to pull in outside help. Um, but I do a lot of training and I do a lot of risk assessment. And so I will be facing these situations with my clients where they may have two employees who are at each other's throats,
mhm,
or not literally usually. It's usually chippy comments, eye rolling, dismissive behaviors toward each other.
mm,
There's a genuine lack of respect.
mhm, mm,
And a lot of it, once you delve into it, comes from, well, I thought last year when we were talking about X issue, you turned away and completely disregarded me. I started to
mm,
withdraw, and then that led to a rift in our relationship. That's a really common scenario.
mm,
And
mhm,
so when I say unpack, I mean you literally will try to get to the root, at least what they think the root catalyst was for the discord,
mhm,
and then you tease it out. You start to then unpack it and where things went wrong, and then you overlay workplace policies and expectations of behavior, and then get people back on track. So it's literally an unpacking of the root issue
mhm.
and then right setting.
Nice. What is so important for you to unpack and get to the root issue?
I love harmony. Again, so much, I think, from when I was a kid, right? I think I
Mm,
I really strove for harmony and I tried to be the joker. Everything's okay, let's make a joke. And I think that was really beneficial as a start for enjoying Jerry Seinfeld and a good joke and getting along with people. But I also think that it helped me to appreciate the beauty of true harmony. Not just harmony for a patch over or a band-aid solution, but truly getting at having a hand in creating harmony between people. It happens to be that I do this in the workplace, and I try to create that in the workplace through my employer clients
mhm,
or helping my employee clients in their conduct. But there's something around harmony and respectful conduct, even if you disagree with each other's viewpoints. There's nothing stopping us from being respectful and harmonious.
mm,
Absolutely nothing.
mhm, mhm.
There's a lot packed up in that. And I have a lot of lessons to learn, and I've done a lot of learning. So I've had to do my own work. But that's a lot of where I come at this from.
Yeah, having to do our own work. You're really highlighting something as a boy, being the joker, and we alluded to your being a joke teller, and I know you in that context as well. It was a tool for you at that time, right? That perhaps was for deflection or handling the situation. So as a youngster or young man, even, you tapping into that tool of humor, if you will, what did it do for you then? And how has that matured to serve you today? How is it different?
Such a good question. In doing some work recently, even and reading
Mhm.
and thinking about my own patterns of behavior, as I've matured, I've become less the eager puppy
Oh.
over time. And I remember when I was young and when I was trying to kind of tamp down maybe uncomfortable emotions and not really like everybody laughing, everybody's good, everything's okay. With that, there's a superficiality
Mhm.
and there's a rapidity and there you're kind of making jokes and everything's. But as I've aged, I've been able to be able to enjoy humor and harmony, but at a slower pace. And I think with that comes a contentedness. And so as I've gotten older, I've become more intent to look at underlying problems, not just superficial, make a joke to get through a difficult conversation. You have the difficult conversation, but if you're
Mm.
doing it with harmony and respect as your goals, then you can have a peace and you don't have to just speed through, make a quick joke and everything is if I hope that makes sense. But there's like a stillness and a calm that's come over time.
How does the humor, how do you engage it differently now versus then?
Well, my jokes aren't any better, but, but
Well, you're a
I,
dad now, so you got dad jokes. They even get worse.
which I think are solid gold. And then you see the eye rolls and then, tell by
Yeah.
your audience, right?
Your proudest moment is when your boys start doing that too.
100, I'm sure it is. And I can't wait because you know it's coming. But I think, yeah, I think with humor and a well-timed joke, you can really disarm, but you can also create common ground.
Hmm.
So I think as long as you're respectful in your humor, and this is one thing, by the way, when I do in workplace trainings that I really try to encourage, when I go into a place and I'm doing bullying and harassment training, or discrimination training, the last thing I want is to chill a culture, and part of that is humor,
Mm.
right? And I think people see this kind of work as heavy,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to come in, it's going to mean we
Mm.
can't talk, and I think the world is afraid of not being allowed to say what they want to say. I'm projecting. But I think from what I'm experiencing, people are afraid not to have a voice. They want to have a voice. And part of that is saying what they want to say. So I think part of that is making fun of ourselves. Part of that is gently making fun of each other in a respectful way and appreciating difference. But I think you could do that with a well-placed joke. And I think in my work, if you do insert a little bit of humor and a little bit of humanity, even if it's at yourself, that can really ease tensions and bring in a little bit less formality to what is otherwise a really stressful circumstance. And
Mm-hmm.
so using using my best material, but trying to be, well timed, but also appropriate, I just find that it can be a really nice tool
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
if you know
The,
the people that you're dealing with,
yeah,
if it's appropriate.
absolutely. The word tension has come up a lot in this conversation, which it's obviously a key driver for you. And I'm wondering, what is it specifically about tension that is capturing your attention?
I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't want to be in it.
Mm.
I don't want to experience it, but I have to. I have to as I've come to learn this. It's a part and parcel of life, whether it's delivering a tough disciplinary message to my boys,
Mm.
whether it's having tough conversations with my partner, my wife, my partners at work. I am partners with two gentlemen, and you have to have tough conversations. Tension is a part of living on this orb. And if you can hold the tension in a respectful way, but holding your message true and leaving space for response, That's the magic. That's what I aim for in my work. So it all arose out of me being very uncomfortable with tension and conflict, but realizing I better learn tools for my own work and for my own good to try to work with it as a
Mhm.
force for change, as a
Mm.
catalyst, right?
It is, you've probably heard the expression before, your pain is your purpose,
I have.
So as we speak about the what we experience as younger people, and we think about what it was that was causing us discomfort or grief or however we want to describe it, it's often, if we go back enough, we often find the solution or the attempt to find a different path is a big part of our present day. Is that something that you see in your work or even in your partner relationships, perhaps? Is that something that you notice?
Yeah, I think people are at all different stages. So, of course, right, and that makes sense. And I'm at an interesting stage. I'm 46 years old right now, and I'm only feeling like I'm coming into an appreciation of what I want to work on. Like I know that there have been some things over the last 20, 25 years that I've wanted to work on, but now it's, oh yeah, and what about this? And what about this? And there are new types of tools that we have, and we can appreciate neuroplasticity more, and all sorts of things are happening. And we have more
Mm,
knowledge than we've ever had, but we also have more problems than we've ever had on some level.
mm,
And so as an individual in a family unit and as a partner in a trio, um, because the complexities of life and what we all bring into our work or bring into a marriage or bring into even a two-person relationship, that requires unpacking things, again, unpacking and being respectful and working through tension points and holding my own truth and saying, I don't think I'm very good with this, but allowing the other person the space to say where they stand on things.
mhm,
And then we're working together. We can't help but work with each other. No
mhm,
person is an island. We need each other now more than ever.
mm.
And
So as
so,
yeah, so
you
I
know,
hear, as opposed to when you were a younger person, I'm hearing at that time, tension was a bad thing, and you wanted to avoid it at all costs.
horrible. Yeah, it
Right?
was horrible. It
Bad
was,
thing, which
yep,
I think that's pretty common for children. Children are just kind of, they just want things to be easy and joyful, and I get that sense. So today I hear a thread of almost a respect for what's the possibility inside tension is, and sort of exploring it and sitting with it as opposed to trying to avoid it or cover it up or temper it, if you will. Is that accurate?
100% accurate. And I can only speak from my own personal viewpoint, but in appreciating the tension where I sit on issues or in
Mm,
circumstances, I can do one of two things with it. And in my own experience, if I don't do anything to address it, I will sit in resentment and
mm,
anger and
mm,
confusion.
mhm,
Or I can find tools to put it out there and kind of have it front and center. And I have to be okay with my colleagues and my family doing the same thing with me.
mm,
Right. And so it comes with this obligation in community that if I'm going to put it out there, I have to be okay with people putting it to me. And
mhm,
therein lies the rub. That if we can
mhm.
find solutions to deal with conflict, it informs my work in the workplace, it informs my life as a partner and as a father and a scouter and Scouts Canada, all sorts of stuff. So
Yeah,
it's a huge issue for me as respect and conflict because that's so much of what I do for a living and
yeah.
the
So
place I
coming
sit.
back to that, so finishing your bachelor's in psychology, you said it was a natural transition to move into law. Tell us a little bit about that.
When I was working as a research assistant, I was fortunate enough at the University of Waterloo where I did my psych degree to be working in a lab, and I took part in a bunch of studies of all different kinds, and that helped me pay part of the way through school and gave me a bit of insight. And they say you go into psychology to try to understand yourself. It was an adage that came up when I was there. Boy, is that true. And so I I can't say that I came away from psychology with a profound understanding of myself, but I certainly learned what my values were and what was important to me over those years at
Mhm.
Waterloo. I grew, I had relationships, I came to know different circles of people, I got exposed to all sorts of folks from around the globe, actually, because they had a pretty international student base. And in that, I came to know that I needed respect.
Mhm.
I needed to give respect and I needed to have respect toward me. And I think you've known me for years. You would agree that that's a touchstone for me, right?
Respect, certainly. Mhm.
And that arose out of my psych degree. So
Mm.
kind of know thyself, a little bit of self-awareness there. And then the importance of compassion and the work I needed to do to be less judgmental.
Mm.
That came out of doing Myers-Briggs testing and things that you would do in the course of your work as a psychology student.
Mhm.
Am I intuitive? Am I judging? Am I, um, you know,
Mhm.
extroverted? Am I introverted? All of those kinds of things. It became a focal point for me. And so I just learned a little bit about my value set and what was important to me and what wasn't.
Mhm.
Because it was respect that really kind of floated to the top, and truth and fairness. Those values naturally led into a career in law because it's very rules driven. It's very much this is right and this is
Mm.
wrong. Or at least that's the viewpoint you have as a young student going into law. There's a lot of complexity about making arguments on either side of of a case.
Mhm.
Leaving that aside, though, the kind of simplified reason that a lot of people go into law is because they believe in right and wrong and they believe that there should be a
Mhm.
set of rules that govern behavior and there should be an answer and a process to get fairness. And I was very much into that. And that sounded
Your
like a
body
bit,
language is telling it. It was very much.
like
You're very
that was
serious about this.
that sounds like a good deal to me. And the University of Alberta lets you in relatively early in the year. And why not? So I left Ontario. I drove across the country with a complete stranger in a U-Haul, and the rest is history. I went to the U of A and graduated in '06.
That's gorgeous. So right and wrong, and you were very emphatic, and you said a couple of times in those days at that time. So this is close to 20 years ago now. What has shifted in you since that time when rules, I get the sense something has changed, where rules and right and wrong and that intense energy, that very serious energy has shifted somewhat. Is that accurate for you? Has it
Yeah,
changed so much?
because life has gotten more gray.
Uh-huh.
We, since 2006, when I graduated, or 2003 when I started, I've aged, I've grown, I've matured, I think. Um, and with that comes complexity. So I think as I've had kids and as I've interacted with more people and traveled and things, it doesn't get more simple. Life gets more gray shaded.
Mm,
And so as much as I went in with this viewpoint of right and wrong and rules and there's a yes and there's a no. No. Our legal system has answers and there are certain things that are yeses
mm,
and nos. That's
mhm,
very much the purview of criminal law. In civil law and contract disputes, there's always two sides.
mhm,
In workplace disputes and bullying and harassment, there are always two sides and misunderstandings. So I don't mean to diminish my touchstone values in any respect. They still are just as strong inside of me as they always
mm,
were. But I've come to appreciate that it's not so crystal clear, and judgment necessarily needs to be reserved
mm,
until you get all the facts, and the truth they say is somewhere in the middle.
mm,
So I've learned to I'm still learning to be okay with that ambiguity until things are sussed out. We work in a justice system. We don't live in a fairness system.
mhm, mhm.
So
A justice system and not a fairness system.
things don't always seem fair. Someone loses a case at trial. Someone who may very well have a viewpoint that is entirely valid may lose a case because the other side had a stronger case, had the better set of facts, different circumstances on their side. That can be tough to reconcile. So as we navigate this as lawyers in the litigation context with our clients, those can be really important human factors that you gotta hold hand appropriately. I'm saying this metaphorically. You hold hands with your client and you walk through
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of stuff that you have to learn to explain to the folks you work with and that you help that might not be right and wrong, yes and no. It's not that clear. There are winners and there are losers sometimes, and there are reasons why things happen, but that doesn't always mean that the system, people always think the system works. Sometimes they will never come to understand why the outcome was the way it was. And so it's my job, hopefully, to give them a bit of an appreciation of why the end result was what it was, um, and be an advocate and an ally through the process.
Mm-hmm. Advocating for truth, as you said earlier, as we talked about earlier.
That's right.
Um, so how I'd love to hear a little bit about how, since the black and white world of Richard as a young lawyer, moving into the gray world of your life today, how have you changed in your practice and in your client relationships as a result of this awareness between black and white and gray?
It was easy when I was young inside of myself to say right and wrong
Mm,
because that was my viewpoint, was my own viewpoint. But now I have at any given time I have to think about my own viewpoint, my wife's viewpoint, the two boys, David and Trevor, my partners, our staff, clients. Like you become aware that there are multiple, sometimes competing viewpoints,
mhm,
right? And so I've become better at that, but this is still work that I do to this day and continue to do through whether it's counseling, reading, coaching. There are all sorts of ways that I try to gain an appreciation of different viewpoints without being judgmental.
mm,
But that's a big growth area for me as I looked back at my family situation and I was
mhm,
I, I was very yes, no, black, white.
mhm,
It's something is right or it's wrong. And now as life it has all of its dimensions and colors and it's not as you can't just say yes or no. Sometimes you can. Sometimes
mhm,
it's crystal clear there's a right answer and a wrong answer. People are hurt or people are being mistreated and disrespected. But in a lot of cases, it's not so clear. And I sit in that ambiguity and I'm better with that now than I used to be.
mhm. So, where does your search for harmony or tension reduction or avoidance, elimination, where does that sit in your practice today?
I personally deal with it with openness. So for example, if whether it's in the course of being a partner at a firm and you have to make tough staffing decisions, I will say my partner Trevor deals with our HR,
Mm,
but that does not alleviate my role in sometimes assisting him with staffing as he needs. But when you're in those moments where you have conflict or you have potential tension points, being open about that and just owning it and saying, this is going to be a really hard conversation.
mm,
This conversation makes me feel uncomfortable. And just kind of putting that out there and saying, I can appreciate that we're in a tension point right now. It selfishly, it makes me feel a whole lot better because I'm putting it front and center so that if I seem anxious or not as maybe elegant in my words, it's because I'm a human being. I'm sitting in
mhm,
this tension point, right? And I think that
mhm,
for me, that's been a huge growth area.
mm,
And it seems so simple. I look back and I say, well, how could I have not done that when I was 25, when I was 30? For some reason, it took a long time for me to be able to say, I don't know, or I'm having trouble with this moment,
mhm,
right? Because you always
mhm,
want to have, I always wanted to have the answers when I was young. And I think that led me to not want to admit vulnerability. I now can better than I used to.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think about confidence in other areas or successes that I've seen through vulnerability, and maybe that helps because I know that the outcome is better. I know from experience that the outcomes and the results that come from vulnerability and everybody hopefully being vulnerable in a conversation, it produces a better result.
Mm.
And it doesn't cause flashpoints as frequently. If everybody goes in positional, or if I go in positional and I say, this is just the way it is, we are making this decision and it just is, and we're imposing that on you. I certainly wouldn't want that. It causes people to get defensive generally.
Mm.
So the result isn't as good. And
Mm.
so I think there's a little bit of a golden rule in that. There's a little bit of just seeing the results of taking a softer, smoother approach. And then if they don't accept that, vulnerability is something that's on the table, that's okay. You have to be okay with that. But yeah, I just see that it ends up with a better outcome. People generally appreciate it, and it's kind of it de-escalates things.
Mm. Is this something that you practice in your law practice now, this approach with your
Yes.
clients?
I practice it in my law practice with clients. I advocate it for my employer clients. It's a huge area of training. So we talk a lot with our employers about the technicalities of occupational health and safety and work safe and the
Mm.
rules. But albeit it doesn't always come down to tough human conversations in those trainings and the Q&A.
Mm.
People just don't like this when it's tough, when it's hard.
Yeah.
They're
Why?
uncomfortable.
What is it that makes it tough from your perspective and your experience?
In my experience, people don't want to be. There are two things. I come at this as the lawyer, and so I hear a lot. I don't want to say the wrong thing. So if I just stick to the script, it'll be
Mm.
easier. But in doing that, people lose their humanity, and I think they stick to literally stick to a script. We are dismissing you because of your performance.
Mm.
And they don't want to say more. They don't want to go
Mhm.
into it. And that doesn't allow the other person to unpack the issue or to appreciate how they can improve, how things could be better the next time, how they can avoid being in this scenario the next time. Whereas if we're a little more human and we can kind of lean into it and give examples or say, I just want you to know I'm really sorry that we have to do this.
Mm.
It goes so far.
Mm.
And so I think that vulnerability really, people just they don't want to make a mistake in being vulnerable and say the wrong thing for fear they'll get their company in trouble. The other thing is I don't know that everybody is okay with sadness and is okay with
Mm.
admitting their own flaws, and ego is a big thing. Ego is a big thing for me. So
Mhm.
from my point of view, for a long time, it's been I don't want to admit that I don't know something or that I'm a litigator. I'm not supposed to feel anxious.
Mhm.
And so I think that also leads people to try to avoid any sort of an indication that maybe they're soft or they're weak or they're not fully equipped or do you know what I mean? People see it as a
Mhm.
weakness.
Mhm.
It's a long way of saying people see it as a weakness, and I don't know that they're ready to put that out to the world.
To be there, yeah. You're touching on something really interesting because I see the same thing in the work that I do, as you know, around differentiation and working with my clients. Very often, what people see as a weakness or a risk is actually, to your point, the path to a greater outcome.
It's magic.
Tell me more.
It's even in the partnership. So we've got three of us, and we're gentlemen of different kinds, right? We
Mm.
have very different temperaments. One of my partners is I call him even Steven. He is culture to a T. He gets people. He's an empath, and he's the consummate introvert. And he has these deep thoughts. He does the deep work. He's got such a deep understanding of human nature, and then we've got another fella who's a driver. He's very entrepreneurial. And before you know it, he's, 10 miles ahead and he's like, let's do this, 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 this. And then I've generally thought that I'm somewhere in the middle, but I don't think I am. I think I'm more toward the entrepreneurial, fast-paced, dynamic side. That can cause a rift. Two people who are
Mm.
similar, there's going to be a
Mhm.
rift there.
Mhm.
And two people who are dissimilar so much. There can be rifts there. So the three of us have to find ways to navigate tough conversations where one or two of us may be way down the highway. And then our introverted partner with his deep work says, "Hey, have you thought about X?"
Mhm.
Oh, no, but that's a really good consideration, sir. And so it's those conversations that can sometimes require vulnerability, sorries, like an apology, an acknowledgement, and just kind of coming around our goal, which is to take care of our baby, the company we formed, and the value set that we established at day one.
Thank you for that. You're talking about that dynamic and how it happens, and then ultimately what brings you together
Value
is
set.
it's the values and the common goal, the common taking care of your baby in your language.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful anchor for what reminding all of everybody that you essentially want the same thing, which I think
Yeah.
is very often in contentious environments. Ultimately, most people want the same thing, whether a peaceful or separation or whatever it is. Most people, they don't necessarily agree on how to get there or what have you, but most people agree on the ultimate outcome in, some format. Is that
And in
something
my
you see?
practice, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off. I
Yeah.
didn't mean to, but I'm thinking about my practice and I'm
Yeah,
thinking
exactly.
about if for a long, long time, especially in the unionized context, there's the management and there's employees. Non-unionized, you still have employer and employee, and never the twain shall meet. We have
Mm,
opposing. No, we don't.
mm-hmm,
We don't have opposing goals.
mm-hmm,
We're very much aligned. We want to create
mm-hmm,
a great product, go to work, have dignity, have a good reputation and brand individually or as a company. We want to be able to hold our heads held high and we want to make a good income for the company or the people.
mm-hmm,
All of these things can coexist.
mm-hmm.
So if we come back to our mutual values, that's the rub, that's the gold.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It holds you to the same. Yeah, it holds, keeps you in aligned,
Yeah,
keeps you very tightly aligned as long as your values are shared.
that's right.
So, coming back to, because I'm really curious about this. In the work that I do when I'm working around specifically differentiation, it's actually differentiation is in part a need to be vulnerable and to step into that place of the pain becoming the purpose, right? There's that piece. Um, in your work in founding and building Ascent with your partners, how did you navigate that territory in establishing your core? And where did you see this tension and the opportunity inside it in working with your partners?
There's a lot that's packed up in that. And if I were to distill it quickly, it would be that we established values that we all agreed on were they're not wavering. They are
Mm,
100% touchstones. It's chirp. For us, it's chirp. Courage, humanity and care, honesty, integrity, respect, and professionalism. We say them every single 9:15 meeting on Tuesday mornings to our entire team. And when a shiny object comes along or a temptation to
mm,
veer off, we compare it to chirp and we say, is that in alignment with our values and the lane that we're in as workplace lawyers?
mhm.
If
Yeah.
something's out of the lane or it's in opposition to our values or one of our values, then it's a no. It's an absolute no.
Mhm.
And we
Mhm.
recently had an issue with that, just given the way that the political strife has been
Mm,
unfolding in the States. And I won't get too far down this path, but we had to make a decision about going to a conference in DC.
mm,
There was a conference that we had already paid for, and it was in Washington, D.C., and it was in April, and we couldn't, in good conscience, with chirp front and center, go spend our money when the tariffs were coming out full force, when there was such antagonism to the
mm,
Canadian economy and leadership. And so we had to make the decision, no,
mhm,
we're going to potentially lose a bit of money by canceling. And we went to
mhm.
Souk, and we had a great time. It was amazing.
Better outcome,
Better outcome.
perhaps. More
And
aligned with
closer to
values.
home,
Mm,
it worked on so many levels. So I think that keeps us front and center, but also the ability to realize that we are human beings navigating in a legal world, we are not expected to always be perfect. And so when something comes up, I'm the director of client service. And when something comes up, saying sorry to your client is okay. Lawyers don't say sorry. Don't
Mm,
say sorry. You're a lawyer.
hmm
I apologize. I said I was going to get it done for you Friday. I didn't.
hmm
Or I missed something. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does,
hmm
that is our approach.
Get guided by your values.
Guided by our values. You have
Hmm
to be, and you have to be human, and you have to be accountable and front and center and address it as a person in a relationship with a client because we're relationships first.
Right.
And that keeps us, I think, to your question, that's what keeps us on track. 5 years in, September 21st will be five
Oh,
years.
congratulations.
Thank you. It's
Yeah.
incredibly exciting. We've been doing law for a long time, but this is law differently. This is
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah, interesting law differently. And what we've been speaking about is that how your values have provided you with not just the anchor and the guiding posts, but also the vision for where you want to be,
Yeah.
right? Your values are actually helping you differentiate yourselves from your peers in other companies.
And I don't want profit over a lack of peace. Like we've built a company and we have people in our company that want to have outside interests and they want to be
Mm,
having a good life and contributing to community and doing all sorts of other things. And so it just informs everything that we do when we build our firm and when we look at where we're going to put our charitable giving and being a B Corp and all of the things that come along with it. So it really does inform everything that we do and personally as well.
amazing. So I'm just noticing a shift in the conversation, which I'm actually loving this because we've been speaking a lot about your past story and how, tension, if you will, or wanting to avoid that has been such a common thread, and then turning that into the possibilities that tension affords us
Yes.
by being open to it and sitting with it, unpacking it, exploring it, and how that has actually um, put you where you are today and interestingly, even in your practice, there's less litigation, more mediation, if I'm right. Is that true?
Yep. And so I personally, over the last 5 years, I did a lot of litigation in my first 10 years of practice, first 14 years of practice. Now I'm doing investigations, high
Mm,
conflict,
mm,
and I'm doing mediation work, just starting mediation work, and I'm going through the Justice Institute. And it's kind of incredible because I'm going right into the belly of conflict,
isn't that
but in a
interesting?
different context.
Right. And interestingly, when you think about what you're doing now, going into the belly, thank you for that description. It's so beautiful. Going into the belly of the conflict, what is inspiring you to not only avoid it, but go into the belly of it? What's on the other side of that for you, Richard?
I can I have personally seen the change that can come about. And I don't mean to be, oh, everything is great and rosy. Sometimes you don't end up with an outcome where everybody continues to work together for years.
Mm,
Sometimes it's the wrong person in the wrong seat, or you can't bridge the gap.
mhm,
But by going into the conflict and parsing it out in a respectful way,
mm,
we're getting at it, but we're not using inflammatory language or inappropriate ways of communicating, you're getting at it and then you're making decisions. Okay, can I live with where we each sit on an issue? Or are we going
mm,
to agree that we can move forward with that policy in mind, respectful conduct in mind? Like you go right in and you suss it out. You're not running from it and avoiding it and just kind of making jokes and pretending it doesn't exist. It does exist.
mhm,
So let's use it as a catalyst to fling us forward into the future to be better.
mm. I think this is so interesting because as a catalyst, you're right. I think from my perspective, when we avoid that tension, you're staying at a very high level. You're staying at the surface, right? Because you can't go anywhere with that. It's
No,
you're just kind of hovering and trying to keep the peace, so to speak,
exactly.
not go anywhere with it by going into the belly of it. Interestingly, going into the belly of it with the guideposts of practicality, fairness, respect, you're allowing for a space that honors both parties, or however many parties are involved, right? Honors that space. And to your point, it creates a better outcome. From your perspective, what does that mean, a better outcome? I'm curious what you're seeing in your work that helps us see, as people who might be more resistant to go into that, or think that there's the right and the wrong and there has to be a winner. What's the frame you're bringing to this conversation in terms of better outcome?
Discord, in my opinion, discord occurs because there's not alignment. So generally, people, even if they're all bad actors, if there's alignment, there's harmony of a sort. It's weird to say that, but you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But in the workplace context, you've got certain conduct that's acceptable or encouraged even, or it's prohibited. And so when I get in and I'm doing my work, those are the rules of the game. And in a lot
Mm,
of cases, there can be misunderstandings and people are not perceiving their own role in things. They're not appreciating how their eye rolls, their little behaviors insidiously chip away at their relationships with others. And before they know it, they're on the outs. They're feeling like they're not part of the fabric of a company or an organization.
mm,
It's amazing when you go in and you see this work being done or do this work, and you give people a little bit of insight into where things started to go off track. They want to get back on track. And so they go the
mm,
extra distance, if anything, after the fact, assuming everybody's continuing to be employed and working together. The harmony after that is so much more profound. And there's more communication. Like, I just want to be clear. Yesterday, when I said that, I didn't mean that. Like they go above and beyond to try to explain their actions because they can appreciate that they've not fully seen their role in things where it's gone
mhm.
sideways or there's been conflict. And that's magical. But on the other hand, sometimes you'll find that you go in and do this work and somebody says, you know what? Yeah, I'm not happy. I'm not in the right place. And I haven't been in the right place for 6 months.
Mhm,
And it can be for a whole host of reasons, personal, professional,
mhm.
whatever. And they make a decision to leave. But even that departure can be done in a really dignified way.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't have to be where everybody's sickly sweet and everything. There's a dignity. And yes, we will message your departure in a way that allows you to hold your head held high. And we wish you the best in your future endeavors.
Mhm.
So there can definitely be win-wins here. And just incidentally, if I may, without
Of
being a
course.
windbag, I did this work personally. So even when I grew up, um, having for years kind of been the joker in the family and the
Mm,
jester. I went back and I've done that work with my mother and my brother and my father even. And I've had to kind of face my actual conflict and have those
right.
discussions. And it's some of the hardest work I've ever done.
Mhm,
But by going into that belly and personally, it's been incredibly rewarding. And I'm not fully there yet in terms of reconciling everything,
mhm.
but it's work that's definitely beneficial. And I truly believe in it.
Yeah, the interesting thing here is, really want to honor and acknowledge that, and because it is hard work, and at the same time, your experience of that hard work makes you more empathetic to the experience of your clients and the workplace dynamics that they're experiencing, right? Because you have a different lens on it, because you've experienced it, and because it's important to you, and because you're driven to give people this experience of harmony
Yeah.
by moving through the belly of the conflict, which I think is really, really interesting. And you see that by moving through the belly of it, there's a more peaceful and better outcome on the other side. Is that accurate?
Yeah. And sometimes you just have to say, go on faith, trust the
Mm,
process because they don't always see it.
yeah, that's
But
fair.
that's why processes exist because there is a rationale for them, right? And it's easiest to go in when you're not involved in the conflict yourself.
Right. And when you're not involved, but you've had the experience of it, you can bring that wisdom into this, right? Into the
Yep.
work. Um, so, as we think about the thread, we started back when you were a little boy in your family dynamic, and now you see who you are today, helping others navigate the same thing in a different setting.
That's right.
Just fascinating to me. I just want to take a pause for a moment and give you a chance to share with us what's really stood out for you from this conversation that you might like to share with our listeners.
We talk a lot in professional circles about imposter syndrome and not necessarily feeling like you've made it or you're there
Mm,
or um, you've learned as much as you actually have. I think we discount our own skills and our own contributions. And the one thing that I try to quiet are those voices that say you haven't done this long enough to be entitled to tell
mm,
others how to deal with conflict, or you have your own conflict in your own life. Who are you to tell others what? And I'm not telling anybody else what to do. And
mhm,
I think it's easy to get caught up in the naysaying and the
mhm,
voice in the back of our heads that tries to discount us. But we all have something to add. Our value set, as long as it's aligned with our work, I think it gives us this huge propulsion to
nice.
be good at it and keep honing our craft. And so I just try to quiet those voices and just be confident and comfortable in my own vulnerability. And those are the days when I feel I'm best at my craft.
Mm, isn't that great?
Yeah.
So, if you think about someone, I mean, you're bringing young lawyers, new lawyers onto your team, I would imagine, right?
Yep.
As you're thinking about mentoring them, or even someone else who isn't necessarily joining Ascent, who's beginning their law career, what wisdom might you offer them?
Put in the time, number one. If you're truly dedicated to being good at X, whatever it
Mm,
is, it could be it can be a volleyball player. It doesn't, lawyer, doctor, accountant, whatever. Put in the time to be good. Read about your craft, study it.
mhm,
Malcolm Gladwell says 10,000 hours, and that roughly holds to 5 years in our profession, which is where people start to generally get competence to run a file from
mm,
start to finish.
interesting.
But you've got to put in the time and the dedication, and it's never wasted.
Hmm.
Surround yourself with those who are already good at it. To the extent
Mm,
that you can choose mentors and professional coaches and people to ask questions of, and never stop being, you will love this, Michelle, never stop being curious. I know you are a staunch advocate for curiosity,
That's true.
and I find that those
Mm,
days when I'm more curious and less judgmental,
mm,
I'm also more peaceful. And again, it's a daily struggle for me personally,
mhm,
but continue to be curious and ask questions and be part of a group. You can do your craft at many, many, many different shops or
mm,
organizations. Pick one that supports your growth.
nice.
I
Hmm.
think that's really important because you can have continuing education and mentorship at a lot of places, but you can also miss out on those opportunities if you start off in a place that doesn't value that.
Right.
So be a bit judicious in where you land and be keeping your eyes on opportunities where you can be your best and be put in a position to be your best and supported.
Gorgeous. Thank you for that wisdom.
My pleasure.
For those who would like the opportunity to either follow you, connect with you, or perhaps pursue a relationship with you, where might they find you, Richard?
I am Arben Johnson on LinkedIn. We also have Ascent Employment Law _BC. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and my email address. And I'm always open to people contacting me and letting me know what their experiences are and bouncing questions. Richard at ascentemploymentlaw.ca.
Perfect. We'll make sure those links are available to our listeners.
Thank you.
And is there anything final that you would like to offer before we finish up?
I'm a work in progress, and I love to see that everybody else is. We're all in this together.
Aren't we, though? It's so true. Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation today, Richard. We'll look
Thank
forward to seeing
you.
you again soon. Bye
Absolute
for now.
pleasure.
Take
Bye.
care.